Henry Alexander, welcome to the show.
William Griffin, thank you for having me.
Dude, you're welcome. I was so excited when you said yes to coming on.
It was a great opportunity to just to catch up with you, and cool way to do it. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, dude, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right, let's get right into it. Brass tacks. Henry, I thought I'd start off with the most interesting question I could ever possibly ask. Who is your favorite Seinfeld character and why?
Oh, man. This is a great question.
Hey, for everyone listening, we're going to get into some real stuff like geopolitics and economics and British history. And we're going to get into some stuff. But I'm trying to screen out all the people who cannot hang. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, man. All right. So favorite on a personal level, I would definitely have to say that I think that for me, George Costanza is actually the entire show of Seinfeld.
Really?
I mean, like part of me wants to say Kramer, but it doesn't feel true. You know, I feel true. I feel true to Costanza.
All right, you got to unpack that for me. I did not expect that. I really didn't.
You didn't?
No.
Nah. All right. The thing about George Costanza is like, he's kind of the one that's on the hero's journey here, you know? And I forget which season it is when he has the unlocking of his personality. When he receives the piece of advice, which is whatever you think about doing, do the opposite. And as we remember, he embraces that and it completely changes his fortunes. Like I think that's what ends up getting him the job at the New York Yankees. Some girl that he got on a date because of that advice got him that job at the Yankees, which kind of set up the arc for the rest of the season. But, you know, George is really like, he's this big internal, like his internal conflict is just so, like, I don't know. I just think that there's something that's very deep about his neurosis and his complexes and how honest he is with all of it, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
That's pretty interesting.
But he's honest with himself.
Yeah, he's a liar, but he's an honest liar. And the thing is that, like, if you pin him down to the ground, he will sing. You know, when you put George on the spot, he'll break down. You know, I mean, how many of these storm offs in the diner have we seen when George is confronted with some great revelation about who he is? You know, and it's this constant, like, George is always working on the puzzle of George, and what a puzzle it is. And so we're there for the journey. And that's one thing that I just love about Costanza. You know, Kramer's a wild card, but in almost a stable and predictable kind of way, you know?
Right.
But
you know,
the thing is,
there's the door. You know, he's going to steal some cereal. You know, he's going to put Japanese men in wooden shelves and turn on.
It's going to be some kind of a ridiculous situation, but it's almost predictable in its nature, you know. Whereas what I feel like what we get with like Costanza is like a lot of surprises along the way, you know, as we find these little quirks out about him, and you know, and then of course like the relationship with his parents and Serenity Now, and you know, all of these
Festivus.
There's a world that we get into through George Costanza that we don't really like. Even Seinfeld doesn't offer that. What does his parents give us? Florida, you know. So
Florida.
I never liked the Florida episodes. Yeah, it's just way too much. You know,
midnight snacks.
Take the pen. Take the pen, Jerry.
You're right. We get more. We get more of a glimpse of where George comes from than we don't even know anything about Elaine's family.
Not really. No, she's from Baltimore. She's you know, kind of waspy, like Bryn Mawr, kind of a kind of a type. Yeah. And
for all you uneducated, unwashed peasants listening to the show, Bryn Mawr is an incredible women's college, ladies' college,
and women's college,
in the Northeast.
I guess in Philadelphia, but don't quote me on that.
The city of
somewhere up there.
Yeah,
way down here.
Yeah, somewhere up there.
But I expect them to understand the difference between Davidson and Elon. You know, it's just
right. You know, do you understand Swanee versus whatever these other? I don't know. All that's falling away. We won't get into that. Okay, I respect that. You know, I think you're spot on. I was just surprised because George. God, what do I think about George? Actually, I was looking at a meme today, and it was the meme of George. A meme of George George Costanza, and he was like, when I do the opposite, everything works, or something like that. So it's funny that you brought up that point.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think there is something, there is something to that, to the degree that like we as humans tend to find ourselves more often than not operating in a pattern of habit,
Absolutely.
And to like whatever degree we're unhappy with the results of that pattern of habit, and you could point to any kind of an existential, grievance or malady here, job, relationship, not enough money,
smoking cigarettes, whatever it is.
Yeah. Smoking cigarettes. Like, I got a problem with donuts from time to time, but it's like, but all these things, they happen like when these patterns. So it's like, if you're not happy with your life at all, which is true in the case of George Costanza, frankly, the best thing that he could do would be the opposite of what he would normally do, because it's like he's so in himself that if he doesn't have that very simple cue, to just point right on the money, just do the opposite, then he would get lost in it. But he can handle that, and it works for him.
Dude, I think that this isn't really a personal development podcast, but I love that you said that, because I mean, that's even how this podcast is coming about. That's how everything in my life has come about. It feels like, because I did the opposite of whatever I didn't like that was happening. Like, oh, nothing's going on. Okay, well, the opposite of that is to do something, and then stuff starts happening and feeding on itself. So
1 second, please.
Yeah, do it. We'll edit it out. It's all good. Unless I don't do an editor, and then this is just filming, which is also a possibility. Folks at home, maybe one day when you're bawling podcasters, you too will have these technical issues. Oh man, I was just lecturing our audience because I probably won't even edit this. Anywho, okay, that's great. I don't want to, now that we've gotten all the morons to stop listening to this pod, I would like to transition. Yeah. Now that we've filtered our audience very well. Okay. I think, let's see. What do I want to ask you next? How do we use this? All right. The Port of South Carolina. Henry Alexander, what is going on with that? Tell us about the macro or the micro of Charleston, South Carolina, and the port.
Man, you put me on the spot there. I would need to be more prepared on it to actually give an honest answer there. Obviously I used to work in that industry for quite some time, and I could speak to, certain trends and certain things, but
love it.
A lot has changed. A lot has changed in the 18 months or so since I've been out of it. So I couldn't tell you like the big picture stuff.
Okay.
And actually be up to date. One thing I will say though, particularly around, I guess if you want to get like geopolitical or political with it, but it's exactly the advantage that South Carolina has, because economically and globally, because of the Port of Charleston, is really kind of an interesting one. First of all, we've taken our port surface area, which is not huge, but we've kind of figured out a way to make the most of it. And then by making this inland port system where we've got direct depots on I-85, which is, I call it the river of money, that flows basically from, between Atlanta and Charlotte. And then you've got I-95, which is the river of money, which runs up and down the eastern seacoast. You're able to plug directly into these two major arteries of commerce and do so in a way that has a pretty directly. They just essentially drop them on trains and move the trains up there, unload them, and then they go out through these terminus. So it's an interesting concept, but that's one thing that the state, I think, has been very forward thinking and doing to set us up competitively. And I don't know what the latest is with Hugh Leatherman Terminal, but that's an interesting story, and I would have to do some research and get back to you on that.
What is that?
But we did. There's a new port. I don't want to say too much, but there's a new port that we built down here. It's in North Charleston, kind of in the old naval shipyard overlay. They're off Sproul, and it's state-of-the-art terminal, but there have been some interesting, essentially you could say like union contract issues that have come up regarding intentions and things that they were going to do when they started planning for the terminal, and then legislation and policies that have come into being since then. But so it's one of these great, it's in the courts kind of, scenarios. And I'm not a lawyer,
Gotcha.
so I couldn't
really
speak
I don't want to
well
create
to
any enemies or anything.
Yeah, I don't want to say,
yeah.
And, I just, on both sides of any argument, I think there's valid points definitely to be explored. But I think what would be almost more interesting would be to hear people who are directly involved with that.
For sure.
Kind of give their side of the opinion, because it's something that's worth discussing. It's not something that we really talk about as a city down here, certainly as a state, as much as we should.
So I was recently in Tampa, and my buddy for a wedding, and my buddy showed me an app where it estimates. It's called Blast Sim, and it basically takes a nuclear bomb. What would happen if that nuclear bomb? I'm trying to be respectful, guys, but it's also an interesting concept. Like, if a nuclear bomb detonated in Tampa, for example, what would be the blast radius, and what would be? The app doesn't do this part, but what would be the effects of a nuclear blast on different urban areas in the U.S.? They have the different nuclear bombs of like the Soviet or the Russians, the Chinese, like they have like man. You know what I'm saying? So like this is something, So
I don't even want to look at that. That sucks.
It's not addictive because I only play with it like one time, and by play I mean intrigued of like this is my own pod. This is what I can do. Point being, how if Charleston, the port and the city disappeared, what does that do to our supply chain? What are the effects of that in America?
That would be really bad. It would be really bad. I'm not like a legit. I mean, there's a lot of analysis, I'm sure, that already exists behind this. I'm not an expert, but I can tell you, based on very broad facts, there are, a handful of truly productive ports on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd say less than 5 that are like, world-class productive ports. In my mind, you got Miami, you got Jacksonville, you've got Savannah, you got Charleston. Baltimore is a shadow of what it used to be, but you also have North. And there's still there's still ports and everything up in the Northeast, but when you look at like actually who's the most productive, and it tends to be the ones that I mentioned further south. So and also the ports in the Northeast, there's a massive variety of terminus that they have. So they handle a lot of different types of cargo, and it's just a little bit different. But when you talk about when I think about the big, highly productive East Coast ports, that Charleston's for certain one of them. And I apologize about the dog barking. It's
my pod. You can have as many dogs as we want.
I'm glad I got headphones in because he's got a loud one. But
he's just like, in to what your port.
Yeah,
like, I'm in.
But so anyway, you take Charleston out of the mix, and if you got Charleston, you'd probably mess up Savannah pretty bad too. I'd imagine. I mean,
plus all the golf at what is it called in Hilton Head and Myrtle Beach, like all that golf lost.
All that golf lost. Yeah,
that's really would be the critical thing.
The destruction of golf courses.
Yeah, that would be the truly tragic thing of it all. All right. Okay, I want to get your perspective on, could you tell everyone your educational background overseas? And I want to delve into like the perspective that gives you and any interesting things you saw in your educational perspective amongst Scottish landowners, for example. So give us
interesting stuff for sure. So I was born in Columbia, and I went to just like regular.
That's Columbia, South Carolina, guys.
South Carolina. Yeah. For those of y'all that don't know, we were. So I was born there. Moved to Charlotte, first grade. When I was in 8th grade, I started at a boarding school in Scotland, in Edinburgh, outside of, it's called Merchiston Castle School. And it was the only all boys boarding school in Scotland at the time I was there. And I think there's probably far fewer in the UK in total now than there were back then. So that's just the way the trends are going. But it was, and they were very, very good at what they did. When it came to structuring curriculum for boys, and I think this is something that we just like really don't talk about enough, but it's like there's a massive difference between what, like, if you want to get a boy functioning at a very high level and have him fully engaged in everything that he's doing, whether it's sports, music, academics, social, like whole picture, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. You've got to keep boys are they're wired to be engaged physically. And so a lot of what they did there was just run us into the ground. And I think it's the same thing that the Army does in basic training. It's like they're not running you around out there to train you to war. They're running you around out there so that when they get you to the classroom, you will sit down and pay attention to what they're saying to you.
Are you serious?
That's my theory. Yeah. That's what I think it is.
Dude,
you were there for Navi at the Citadel. Yeah, you know what it's like. Yeah, I mean, you're there in the classroom, and it's like, thank God I'm not doing push-ups. I will listen to whatever these people are telling me, And it's
you have single-handedly re-encouraged me to like sprint more and be going to the gym more. I go to the gym now, but like that makes so much more sense about really daily. We should, like 10,000 years ago, we were all running around hunting. Right.
We were. Yeah.
So,
and our brains are still wired for that very much. There's like a catch and kill, I think, pursuit, like in men's mind, this like, we're almost like wired for like, what is it, like pursuit and conquest, and then the release that comes from it, because we had to be. I mean, if you just didn't want to hunt, like it's like, it's not my cup of tea.
I'd rather,
you'd probably last for about a day, maybe a week, but
I just want to stay in my cave and play video games.
Yeah. But there's a lot to that. But anyway, so Murchison, they were very, very good at structuring the curriculum so that it was, it was very holistic. Lots of things were accounted for. And the more time that I gained distance from that experience, the more wisdom I see in it all. It really was interesting. I think the thing that was achieved through the British method of learning, which primarily relied on written answers. I mean, you had to write your answers. I had to write paper, like written responses for the maths exam that I took for GCSE maths.
Really?
Yeah, I had to, be able to justify, how I arrived at my, there's proofs and explanations and things like that were required all throughout. So there's no thought that you're allowed to leave unjustified. And as a result, I think you tend to just naturally begin this process of like, you receive an idea and you will think it all the way through, because you're conditioned to think things through. And you're also conditioned to, to process that and to perform some form of a judgment, or an analysis of whatever is being stated. So it's the same thing people speak to. The benefits of having a liberal arts education is the critical thinking aspect. But imagine if instead of preparing for multiple choice answer tests that we take here in this country, if we had all of our children from the time they're like, learn how to write, they have to justify their work. They have to offer some explanation of how they arrived at this conclusion. There's nothing, you have to have proofs. You have to have some form of a backup for how you arrived at that, and it's kind of a beautiful thing. And I'm really just deeply grateful that I had, I kind of had this way of thought and, instilled in me from an early age, because it gave me, probably the most reliable tool that I've had, throughout my entire life, which is my ability to, essentially like probe the world around me for the truth and to understand.
Yeah, I'm speechless as I'm trying to figure out the idea. I didn't realize there was that much of a difference between the American system and the UK huge. System.
Yeah, it's very different. And, obviously like Raz, my girlfriend, she went to international school in Dhaka, also learned the British method. She took O levels and everything there. So she she and I actually had pretty much the same high school experience, which is kind of crazy. I think we're about probably one of maybe a handful of kids in Charleston
Yeah,
who
I
can
remember
say
you
that they've
saying that.
had that, you know.
Yeah, I wanted
But
to bring
that's
that up because you
yeah,
said I remember you saying that you're like so Henry's dating a girl named Riza, and she went to the same British style system school, and you were like, dude, it's like we've had the same experience a world apart, but y'all
yeah.
have that commonality.
Yeah, the commonality. And the thing is that it's such an intrinsic commonality because of the way that it conditions you. You know, it's almost like you couldn't put your finger on it, but you know that it's there. You know, it's all about the approach in my mind. You know, and in my experience, you know, it's a lot easy. I think that we can kind of pick up on each other's thinking a little bit more because it tends to be more inclined, you know, a certain way because of that. But it's interesting. So, and that's one of the cool things I think about the British Empire is this system of education that they left behind is like the best in the world for kids. You know, grade school, grammar school, you know, the secondary education, and then the A levels. It's, I mean, it really is. It's a phenomenal system of education for preparing, you know, I think independent thinkers, you know, critical thinkers. People that can enter out into the world and actually solve problems and, you know, offer leadership and much more engaged levels of participation.
Right.
And, you know, I think the problem with America is that we're raised on multiple choice tests and popularity contests. You know,
that's sadly.
And that's the great thing about the British society too, man, is like they don't need to worry about the popularity contest because they've got their guy, they got their queen. You know, it's like it's fixed. You got the monarch, that's the head honcho. Everybody else just calm down. You know,
that's interesting. You're saying because there's already a fixed hierarchy in some sense.
Yeah, there's just a little bit. There's just like a little bit more. Everybody can just kind of like, all right, let's just get on with it. You know, and
that reminds me of like there's sometimes freedom in structure or freedom.
There's a lot of freedom in structure. There's a lot of freedom in structure. You know, provided that it's not an oppressive structure, there's a lot of freedom in structure. And I think that the best structures offer the most freedom and far more freedom than you could possibly have if you did not have that structure. Because everything's got to be accounted for. If you think about it, like what would the bees do at night if they didn't have the beehive to crawl into? You know, it's a structure that provides, you know, shelter, security, industry, productivity, all of these things for them. You know, they go out in the world and they're these free flowing, these ephemeral, you know, fairy energies of consciousness, and everybody's all excited about the bees. But at the end of the day, they got to have the hive, man. Otherwise, they get, you know, they're just gonna. I don't know what's.
And they have the hive. They have the location. They have the same activities they're probably doing every day.
And it's a regulated. It's a regulated society where there's, you know. And I'm not pressing for like, you know, top down regulation of society by any means. But what I'm saying is, you know, these natural orders occur which actually promulgate freedom, you know, and that's kind of, you know, I think where I don't know how we wound up here.
Oh, that's the plot. That's the magic.
But no, there's definitely something to that. You know, with the structure and in the UK societally, it's different now. I mean, I don't want to say, you know, much because I haven't been back to the UK in a long time, and I cannot imagine how. Yeah, I can't imagine how things must have changed there as things have changed here. You know, in the past like 15 years, it's just remarkable how much society here has changed. And I'd imagine that you'd see propagation of similar cultural issues there as well, because I mean, I think a lot of what the West is dealing with is fairly systemic. I think Britain tends to be, you know, about 6 months or 12 months forward of the Americans as far as cultural issues go. And political trends and stuff, they tend to be just a little bit in front, but it's all kind of the same stuff.
I can see that. I'm going to read you a quote that you told me. We were visiting a battleship, and you told me a quote, and you can respond to it, or we can put it on the shelf and move on to something else. But you said something roughly like, "Never get involved in inter-Slavic warfare." Or something to that.
Oh God, yes. Oh man, thank you. Yeah.
So as of the recording of this, there is a war going on. It's obviously very sad and tragic, but there is in fact tragic, a war going on in Russia, Ukraine. There's a conversation in the U.S. about to what extent to support Ukraine. What are the goals? What are the risks of this conflict for the U.S., the West, and Ukraine and Russia? So could you unpack your quote and present us with a perspective that you could share with us? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I guess my quote would have been something to the effect, just to restate it. But never get involved in an inter-Slavic conflict. As a third party, it's not a place where you want to find your fingers trapped. Here's the reason why I say that. Eastern Europe and Russia, the history of that region is pretty darn interesting. And it's an extremely fluid history because of its lack of a geographic backstop. What I mean by that is pretty much any army, if it's well supplied and big enough, can kind of roll across the region without hitting any terrain that will slow them down or stop them. You have rivers that you have to cross, you have cities that you have to take, and you've got vast expanses of very easily navigated land. So for this reason, like from a military logistics perspective, it has always been just kind of this tidal lane where you'll have kind of empires or powers starting in the West that will seek to expand their influence across, and then you have these historic movements of from the Asian side with the going back to the time of the Romans with the Huns moving across the Eurasian steppe and conquering a bunch of lands as they go. And so you kind of have this tide that's rolled backwards and forwards throughout history there. And, as a result, things there are not fixed the way that they are here. And that goes for, people groups, and it goes for geographies. And it's extremely complicated. It's extremely complicated to the point that if you're not from there, it's you need to operate under the assumption that you have no idea what's going on. You can learn a little bit about it, but you will never be able to understand it because it is so nuanced and it's so layered. There are a lot of layers to it. There are a lot of cultural layers to it. There's linguistics, there's economics, there's all kinds of things. And, I just think that there's a mind, there's a Slavic mind that's not well understood by Western thinking.
Go into that.
I just don't think that, Churchill had a quote where it's like, it's like something you can't tell the Americans, whatever, but the Russians need a czar, and they do kind of need a czar. And it's the interesting thing about people is it's like, we'll change what's happening or what we're doing, but the people themselves don't seem to change, And so I think that there's always been this inclination amongst the Russians towards a strong figurehead politically. And for them to function, they need that. That is the government type that works for them as people. And there's best, and there's excellent iterations of it in the case of Catherine the Great. And then there's horrific examples of what this can look like throughout history, but that's kind of what they need, and it's the same thing where it's like, it's like you got different people out there and different people are going to seek different leadership styles, and there's national psyches that are drawn towards different styles of leadership. And I think that's part of the thing where people have the right to self-determination. I think it's critical because, what's good, what could be great for people right here, and work really, really, really well for them. You move to a different town where the economy is slightly different and the peoples went to a different high school and they just have a little bit different way of, and the same stuff could not work there at all. It could be catastrophic for them, and it could fail because there's this massive variety in just, how people are in different places in the world. But there's, and anyway, all of this is to say, I think that there's a lot that we pretend to know as Americans. Like we think that we can just become experts on anything overnight. And that's one of the things about the Ukraine situation that I have had a really hard time dealing with, frankly, because I've had the privilege of becoming friends with like both Russians and Ukrainians over my life and like living with them in high school and, you know, learning about who they are. And I can tell you we're very different. You know, we had very different styles of being. You know, it was kind of interesting because it was like Ivan meets G.I. Joe, you know, and it's like, here we are, the walls down, shaking hands, you know,
boxer, like, what's the boxing movie where like,
I'm like knocking on his door, trying to borrow The Departed. We're just, you know, living life, you know, and,
the movie The Departed you're trying to borrow?
Yeah, the movie The Departed, of course. 2006, man, DVDs.
That was
gotta
2006, share. Right?
Yeah, you got
like,
that's right.
Yeah.
And it's fun because in the you know in your teenage, like, you know, guys are going to talk smack, just, you know, trash talking each other, and it's just and it's all going on, but you're like you're what you're coming up against are all these things that are different, and I you know, I just gained a deep appreciation at that point for how much I did not understand, and I found that to be basically the only way that I could proceed in relating to them. Was for me to just assume that I knew nothing.
Right.
You know?
That's probably wise.
And we were able to find a lot of common ground that way. You know, what would help me then, you know, what would help me as well would be also for them to forget what they thought they knew, you know, and to just meet me, you know? And it's a shame. It really is a shame because I think that like right now our vision as a society on this issue is like 2 inches deep and we aren't thinking any of this through at all, like at all. For some reason, Putin has become this guy that we just have to take down. And he is like really, really bad, you know? And it's true. I mean, I'm like, I can't, you know, confirm or deny any of the bad things that have been said about Putin. And I don't think Putin's a great guy. And I definitely don't think that he has any business rooting around in the Ukraine. I don't, you know? But if you consider the human cost of war, and if you consider that every single one of those bombs that we're sending over there would not be over there if we didn't send them, and if you consider America's success rate with airstrikes and our civilian casualty rates, and you start running the numbers on this thing, this is a bill that is very big and it's artificially inflated. You know, we should be clamoring for peace right now. We don't really want these guys fighting each other that much. And the thing is, Putin's got, you know, he's got some things he's looking to get out of this, you know?
What is that? What does he want?
Personally, I don't know. But I mean, you don't start a war unless you want to get something, you know?
Right.
I mean, like, you know, like Hitler wanted the Sudetenland. So he moved in it, you know, but it's like he was looking to get something out of this. And, you know, the Ukrainians, you know, obviously they've got their lands that they're trying to protect, but identities there are fluid, and it's not as simple as redrawing lines on the map. And it's things are a little bit more mixed up there, and it's an extremely nuanced conversation that I feel like we've just not been able to have as to exactly how all of these pieces do fit together and what outcomes are best. But, you know, one thing that I know is, you know, when America starts arming other countries to fight war against its enemies, you know, it's really, really bad for the people that are getting the bombs from us, just as much as it's really, really bad for the people that we're, you know, intending to have those bombs fall on. You know, it's not like you're going to win. You know, I think geopolitically, America's kind of like that dude that like comes up to the, hey kid, how you doing tonight? You know, you like nice things? You like nice things? Let me show you some nice things. No, I heard that Billy's trying to beat you up. I got something you could whack back. What you want? You want to take a look at it? Yeah. Oh yeah, you like that? Yeah. Hold on, you crack that hammer. You see that? It's shiny, isn't it? You put a bullet right in his head with this thing. Yeah. Next time he comes messing around with you, he got nothing to worry about. And listen, you listening to me? All right. Uncle Sam's got your back. All right. You need to understand that. All right. You go get him, Tiger. All right. And the cops roll up, and 2 kids are dead in the alleyway. You know.
God.
And that's what we do.
So
that's what we do. And I mean, we're the ones that pick over the corpses. I mean, in Central America is terrible. I mean, we got a bad track record on this.
Did you say Central America?
I would encourage anybody who's listening just to look into this stuff independently. It's not.
Yeah.
Our proxy war record here is really a bad one, and it's something that we need to be aware of, because we can pretend like it's not us, but it's actually us. And if the body of this country is not aware of the crimes it is in fact committing, because the head's not talking to it, that's still the body's responsibility. I mean, we got to know what's being done in our name.
Right.
And
the elephant's responsible for what the elephant does. If the elephant moves around and knocks over furniture in the china shop, or I guess a bull, but
yeah, you break it, you buy it. Somebody's got to pay for it.
You mentioned earlier. I want to go back to what you mentioned, something like, if you look at the bill, I'm not exactly sure what bill you're referring to, and then what do you mean between how big the bill is and the bombs that are being sent? You said there's like a discrepancy. Was I hearing that right? Or
between the bill? Oh yeah. No, I'm talking about like the bill for the whole war. If you add up human life, actual capital that's been invested in it, property that's been destroyed, if you count the emotional toll, I mean the human cost, all of that, the bill,
I see.
That planet Earth and humanity is going to be handed at the end of it all.
The money bill, or the cost bill, not the legislative bill.
Yeah. And it's like, where do these things, where like, no one really has a lot right now, actually. And the last thing we need to do is like just tear up a enormously important and productive part of the world for no reason, without thinking things through and talking about it first.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. I'd just say, hey guys, listen, I know you don't like Putin. I know you really want to get over there, just blow the shit out of the place, but let's just think about it just for a second. Is this something we really want to do?
Right.
And I think if everybody was like, whoa, Tiger. And I'm not saying don't believe anything that anybody tells you, because there's a lot of really good reporting and a lot of really good sources going on out here, but you should be responsible for finding those and seeking out the information, the people that are on the ground, and questioning, frankly, where the information, like, who's it actually responsible to,
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of outlets out there, I think, that are definitely driving a narrative that is restrictive to like the overall discussion, and it's kind of a sad thing to see.
Yeah, we want to know what the truth is. We want to do what's right.
We demand answers.
What? Oh, we demand
answers. Yeah.
Oh man.
No, I think they should do it, dude. I think that they should have like a yard sale. Like the Pentagon should have like a yard sale where they like put a bunch of missiles out on like an airbase, and they've got like their intended like they're like their intended like targets and stuff. Uh-huh. And then like Americans just can like filter through there, and you could put like a little money to like fund the missile that you want to go,
You could buy not the crypto thing, the NFT, but for missiles.
Yeah, like the NFT, but it's like fund your own. Yeah, fund your own. Yeah. It's like,
hey, go to my GoFundMe page for my SAM missiles.
Yeah, it's like, the Pentagon's got to do GoFundMe every time they want to blow up a target. They got to raise the $3 million for the missile, and then like the additional like $2.5 million for the operation to pull it off. Like,
right. Oh my!
You got like a bunch of like 5-star generals making TikTok videos trying to raise awareness for their cause.
A bunch of generals just like, hey, can you? And like they're playing with like the filters and stuff.
Yeah.
And
African warlords are not cool, but we can take them out with some help from you. We've got this missile. It's really long, and we're gonna launch it into the Kong. Oh,
They have like celebrities come by, like Lady Gaga's like coming up with a song to Oh my gosh.
This guy's really bad. He chops off arms. He comes in the night and he burns down farms. Everybody hates him. He owns all the money.
Guys,
I don't know.
If you're listening to this, then know that we also don't like a lot of this stuff. We're not trying to be disparaging, but we are just sometimes all you can do is laugh. Good grief.
All you can do is laugh about it. It's ridiculous,
Yeah.
And I just think it would be really funny to see a bunch of like 5-star generals making TikTok videos begging for money. Like, you know,
like David Petraeus is
like,
like
I want to walk in. I want to walk into like a meeting of like the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I want to be in a jazzy chair. I got my leg like cocked up on one of them. I got a bucket of fried chicken. They're like, sir, who are you? I'm a taxpayer. Who are you? General Knuckle Nuts. All right, listen up, boys. It's going to go my way tonight. We're going to sing for your supper.
Oh, my gosh.
You want? I hear y'all want $600 million more for Ukraine. All right, what I want to see y'all do is put on these little tutus I got. I want y'all to all right.
Wow.
Y'all gonna perform the contest winning dance sequence from You Got Served too.
Yeah. This is from Jump Street. This is a song from the hit musical Les Mis. And it's a bunch of like
you're gonna perform
sponsored by Northrop Grumman. Sponsored by Boeing and Northrop Grumman. Wow, I don't think anyone has made this connection between the musical world and the Pentagon establishment and geopolitics. This is very...
Wow, they're all in cahoots.
Yeah, big theater and big defense.
Big theater, big pharma, military industrial complex.
They're turning no, I'm not going to complete that, but it's just like an Alex Jones type thing, but like big theater, big Hollywood, big gulps, and big big old...
I can hear that. I can hear that now. It's like somebody buried a vacuum cleaner and taught it how to speak.
Oh my gosh. All right.
Anyway.
I think this is a great stopping point.
Are you sure?
Yeah, this is the first.
I think you're afraid to keep going.
I don't want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, and more importantly, I want to leave some meat on the bones for the next episode I have with you.
That sounds like a great plan because I don't even think I've answered the first question you asked me. So
it's not about answers, Henry. It's about the questions. I don't know what
It's not about the questions. It's about the journey.
Yeah, it's about the journey, man. So I want to thank you for coming on. I think we've covered a lot of great ground, and you're always welcome back on the show.
Thank you.
And
all right, cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. All right. It's not about the journey. It's about who you